This week on Soundbites, live pastries, dive bars, and a trip to Harbor Town. I'm Chris Herrington, and I'm joined by Digital Director Holly Whitfield. This week, we're going to dish, so to speak, on several recent Memphis food stories. But first, you can find all of our food stories and this show in podcast form at dailymemphian.com, where you can also sign up for our This Week in Food email. You can also catch Soundbites Thursdays at 11 a.m. left of the dial at 91.7 FM WYXR. Perhaps that's how you're listening right now. Or you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. And if you're a Facebook user, as always, we encourage you to join our Table Talk group there as well. Well, speaking of WYXR, we are at Crosstown Concourse, as has been our home away from home of late.
That's right.
And if you are listening live on radio right now, or not live for us, this is pre-recorded. Sorry to burst the bubble on that. But if you're listening to the show on the radio right now, you got to stick around after this show for the next show, which is Eric Barnes' Sidebar, because he's going to be talking to the owner of Lucy J's Bakery, bakery here in Crosstown. And lucky us, in the proximity of the recording, we got some treats. So we've been noshing on Lucy J's stuff here as we head into the show.
I'm highly caffeinated and highly sugared up, so this should be great. Nothing's going to go wrong. Which one was your favorite? We have like 4 or 5 here we've tried. So
we got 5 things in front of us here. We've got a little individual if you believe in yourself, but maybe you can share it with someone. We got a apple crumb pie. We got a pecan pie. We've got an almond croissant. We've got a cinnamon roll with, I think that's some buttermilk, buttercream, kind of cream cheese frosting. What kind of frosting we got on it? Whatever the classic frosting is of a cinnamon roll, that's what's going on.
Cream cheese.
Cream cheese frosting. And then would you call this a Danish, the blueberry thing?
I would call it immaculate, is what I would call it, actually. But it's
You're not
something...
talking about a Sydney Sweeney movie. You're talking about a pastry.
No, I'm talking about this blueberry Danish turnover looking thing.
Some real big, thick blueberries I can see falling out of this thing. Mm-hmm. This is not blueberry filling from a can.
No.
There's a certain restaurant in town, and because, we're trying to be nice on the Soundbites, I'm not going to mention their name, but I was directed there once. It's like, this is the place you got to go for pancakes, order blueberry pancakes. And someone had just taken a can opener to a can of blueberry pie filling and dumped it on the pancakes. And that's not what I want for my blueberry pastry situation.
But this is, yes.
I thought everything was, I haven't tried the pecan pie. Based on the batting average of the other 4, which is a 1.0, 1,000, however you want to do your baseball lingo. I have high hopes. Everything was very good. Very good. Unfortunately, we have to talk. It's hard to talk and eat at the same time. So we ate and now we're talking.
Right. The cinnamon roll was also excellent. Those are my 2 favorites, but it's all good. Everything I've gotten from Lucy J's here in Crosstown has been tasty over the years.
I have on occasion, because I as we all do, but like I think I especially have spent a lot of time at Crosstown because I live pretty near here and I had a kid here. I didn't like give birth to a kid here, but I had a kid in high school. I
wasn't going to say anything.
At Crosstown High, and so I was here a lot. And so one of the places they've got, and I'm gonna even, I don't know what they call it, but they've got a little like croissant, like sugary croissant thing that it's not really filling, but it's got like it's almost like a frosted sort of topping to it. There's a story on Sidebar about whatever this is, but I eat it and I buy it and it's delicious and it's like a croissant-like thing, but sort of a frosted croissant, but small. And I've been known to get that from time to time as I start my day at Crosstown. They also they make bread there, I believe. Yes, so it's not just a sweet shop, pastry shop, but they make bread. And it's kind of a nonprofit. I don't know all the details, but you should listen to the Sidebar to learn all the details about this.
I think they make the bread for Bog and Barley. Is that what we heard? Yeah. So
Bog and Barley, the newish Irish restaurant out at the Regalia Center in East Memphis.
Yes. I have had some really great dining experiences there, like food and service.
Right.
Really top notch. So shout out to them and their bread maker, Lucy J's. Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. Shout out to Lucy J. Shout out to the food. We thank you for bringing it to us today. I've got another brief shout out. We'll get into this more maybe next week because I think I'm going to write about it sometime in the very near future. But I got out for the first time to, and forgive me if I mispronunciate. I will mispronounce. I will I'll know better next time when I've written. But I got out to Mande Dibi, the new West African barbecue restaurant in Hickory Hill from Chef Bala Tunkara, who has Bala's Bistro in Whitehaven.
Yes.
So it opened 2 weeks ago today, I believe is right. 2 weeks ago today. And my daughter and I went out there for lunch yesterday, and she had a chicken sandwich and I had a brisket sandwich, and it was delicious. I was really hoping it would be good because I like the idea of the place, and it was quite good. So I love Memphis barbecue, but the idea of like, let's freshen it up by like bringing some new elements into it is
some new flavors. Yes.
Yeah. Something I really approve of.
I want to try it. That sounds great. I know we talked about them a little bit, I think last week as well. So
yeah, I'm going to try to get out there one more time to try some different stuff on the menu before I write about it, but I'll probably be writing about it pretty soon. I'm committing myself now, actually. I will be writing about it in one form or another.
So look for that story. I think I'm going to be helping you with that one later this week, actually. So now you have to do it.
Now I have to do it. Speaking of things, instead of something I will write about, something I did write about. So I did a story last week on Kinfolk, which as we record will fully open tomorrow, Wednesday of this week. Kinfolk is the new breakfast/lunch, but breakfast oriented, even though it's open through 3:30 in the afternoon. Breakfast oriented restaurant by a chef restaurateur, a guy named Cole Jeans, who operated Kinfolk as a very popular pop-up situation at Comeback Coffee. On and off over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Known for their cat head biscuits and biscuit sandwiches and some of that. That is all going to be on the menu of this new restaurant, but it's expanded from there. And had a nice talk with him and wrote about that. I have not had a chance to get down there. Again, it's not even fully open. That won't open for another day. One of the things I thought was interesting, and I tried to tease this out a little bit in my story, and it was not my plan. When I was there looking around, I was looking at the shelf of cookbooks. I was looking at different cookbooks and stuff you'd expect. And I saw this little slim volume on Japanese cooking. And then while I'm sitting with him, talking to him, we're going sort of through the menu, talking about the menu. There's like, oh, this has some miso in it, and this has some shoyu in it. There's nothing in the decor or the menu that tells you there's a Japanese influence to this, but it's sort of there.
It's there, yeah.
And so I started asking him about it, and he had this really interesting comment I thought about. And I appreciate this as someone who grew up in Arkansas. When he said he was talking about Arkansas, even though I think he's from Memphis. He said, we have a lot of rice. If you look in Arkansas, we have a lot of rice. We have a lot of soybeans, a lot of that kind of stuff. And so that rice, soy is part of like sort of, the culture in this area.
Yeah.
And then you look at Japan and like, I don't know, it's an interesting connection to me.
I have not been down there yet either, of course, since they're just opening. But I did have a friend that got into the soft opening, and she said it was great. And, just full disclosure, when they had their first pop-up ever at Comeback Coffee, the same friend and I, we went to it and we could see the potential, but it wasn't the best chicken biscuit I've ever had. Right. And she said that like they've come a long way. It's consistent. It's good. She had nothing but great things to say about it. So I'm happy that Harbortown has a place for breakfast, another spot. I know that they've had some changes over the last few years, and they have some newer places for folks down there to eat, or for people like us to take a trip down there.
Yeah. So the space where Kinfolk was previously, and I can't even remember the name. It was a taco restaurant that was very short-lived.
Oh yeah. Yes.
It was a very short-lived taco restaurant. And then at some point before that, may have not been immediately before that, but at some point before that, it was an outpost of Midtown coffee cafe staple, Cafe Eclectic. They had a little location down there.
Yes, I remember that.
And I had gone into there. And I don't know what else had been there at the time. But to your point, like, Kokoza seems like it's been a success, which is right across the little street there.
Good stuff.
Kokoza, American Italian Eatery, I think is the subtitle of
yes,
Kokoza.
That
is from the same owners as that on the Majestic Grill downtown. Denny and Patrick Riley. Actually ran into Denny as I was walking back to my car after interviewing Cole Jeans at Kinfolk last week, and talked to her a little bit. Right next to both of those places is a real staple now for decades. I think at this point is Miss Cordelia's Grocery.
That's a good one too. Actually, they have a really good like lunch menu.
Yeah, and we have another story this week. Based on food down there in Harbortown. That's River Terrace new menu.
That's right.
So this was interesting to me. I was reading the story. This was a Kristen Yates story. The new menu items include Mediterranean flatbread, Korean barbecue chicken wings, Nashville hot chicken wings, and St. Louis style toasted ravioli. We are traveling the world.
Wow.
All with our view of the Mississippi River. Which of those things? So you can only choose one. What are you ordering?
Sorry, I'm trying to piece all these together. I am going to go for did you say Korean?
Korean barbecue chicken wings, Nashville hot chicken wings, St. Louis style toasted ravioli, Mediterranean flatbread.
I'm going to go for the Korean barbecue chicken wings, actually.
I am too. If I could go to the Mediterranean itself to eat the flatbread, that would be my choice.
I need more details on that one.
Right. But I feel like the Korean barbecue chicken wings is the way to go.
I'm interested in trying all of those. I don't care about Nashville hot chicken, sorry. But the other three, I would like to try all of them.
So I have a Nashville hot chicken aside. Okay. So we were my wife and son and I were in Nashville a couple weeks ago for my son's spring break. And there is this relatively new development right across the street from the Bridgestone Arena. I was thinking about it in terms of Memphis, in terms of this conversation that's going to be happening over the next few years about Beale Street and FedEx Forum. But there's this relatively new development that's right across the street from Bridgestone, and it's sort of a walk through around a corner, and there's all kinds of businesses there. And they did it's a good job of mixing sort of national chain kind of places. Like there's a Shake Shack with like popular local stuff. So there's like a Hattie B's hot chicken right there in the corner, some stuff like that. There's also this big, nice food hall that's if you walk inside, I think it's called Assembly Food Hall. So we're staying down there and we're walking all around for 2 or 3 days because we didn't get, once we got to the hotel, we didn't get back in our car until we left to come back to Memphis, which was the best part of the vacation. So we're walking around, and every time we walk by the Hattie B's, there's a line out the door, around the block, down the street, like always.
Always and forever.
Always a line, big line. We go to eat at the food hall that night, which was great, by the way. Great food hall. I'm jealous of the food hall. Apologies to Memphis. I'm jealous of a Nashville thing, and it's this food hall.
That's understandable.
Yeah. So we go to the food hall. And my wife and son there's a Prince's hot chicken booth. Now, if people don't know, like Nashville hot chicken, the roots of that are 2 restaurants in particular, Prince's and Bolton's. Mm-hmm. Those are the long time, like before Nashville hot chicken was a thing that was marketed, it was these 2 places in Nashville just sold spicy chicken, right? So that's like the real thing. The real roots of Nashville hot chicken is Prince's and Bolton's. So Prince's, which has its restaurant wherever. I've actually been there, but I can't remember where it was. I've been to the original Prince's. They open a booth in this food hall, one of the many local providers in the food hall. There's nobody there. It is literally 50 steps away from Hattie B's, where people are out the door, down the block, down the street at all times. And the Prince's hot chicken booth is in the food hall right above, and there's no one there. And you know what? It's great.
It's great.
It's great.
Went right up and got your hot chicken.
Yes, my wife and I did. I got Indian food, but
yeah.
So anyway,
that's the beauty of a food hall. But also, that is the most Nashville thing I've ever heard.
It really was. It was like I thought, should I go down and like I don't want to be a jerk and like harangue people in the street, but then B, it's like fine, let them suffer.
Let them do it.
Let them suffer.
Man,
enjoy their suffering.
I wish you would have though.
Right.
Next time. It's probably still happening. Those same people are probably still in line.
They're probably still in line right now. Have you eaten at River Terrace?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time for me too, but I have been there. One of my brothers actually bartended there for a little bit. And I remember when he was bartending, going with my wife and having drinks and having appetizers or looking out. It's one of the better views in town.
I always include it when people are asking about like rooftops or that sort of thing. It's great. It's underrated, I think. At least the spaces.
Yeah.
So, but you know, it's an insular community, so that's what's going on. But I think there's plenty of reasons to go. And now that there's a new menu, I'm gonna have to add it to my list.
The Harbortown thing is an interesting question. You wonder, I think there's been so much anticipation about Kinfolk. People are going to go to Harbortown to eat at Kinfolk.
They are, yes.
Initially, because it's new. But after a while, when you're a place that's in sort of a tightly knit sort of community like that, how much are you catering to, there's tons of people who live down there. How much are you catering to the residents? Is it as like a neighborhood resident place? And how much are people going out of their way to go down there? That's kind of a question you could have about, all the various food places here at Crosstown, right? Crosstown has its own community of people who live and work and hang out here. And I think you eat at those places as a byproduct of your living and working and hanging out. But how often are people who live, in East Memphis just saying, let's go eat at so-and-so when it's in a place like that,
Once a year.
Right. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So I wonder about the Harbortown stuff. I would love to live. This is something that is hard to come by in Memphis. My wife and I have yearned for it. We may be getting it in our new move that we're doing. But the idea of just being able to walk to places and sit down and eat that you want to go to,
Yeah. I do enjoy that in Cooper Young.
Right.
Yeah.
Cooper Young is one of the few places in Memphis that has that vibe.
Yeah. You can't buy a house there unless you're a gazillionaire. But
this is a conversation.
You can.
When I did a story a few weeks ago, which I think we've talked about in the show, but I did a story a few weeks ago on Muddy's Bake Shop. This was, I don't know how much of this made it to the story, if any, I don't remember. But this is a conversation I had with Kat Gordon, the owner there, about why when she shrunk down, she stayed. The Broad Avenue location was the one she shrunk down to. Partly that was because that's where the kitchen was. But also she just said she loved the vibe there. And she talked about the idea, all these locally owned businesses are there together and people walking. And she said there aren't many places in Memphis that had to have that vibe. And she mentioned Cooper Young and she mentioned actually Collierville Town Square.
Right.
It's sort of a suburban oriented version, but it does have that.
And I think South Main.
South Main I would throw out there.
Yeah.
I think, Broad Avenue that's growing there. There's a little sliver of that. I wish there were more, but there's a great little sliver of that in High Point Terrace.
Yeah.
Where High Point Pizza is and where that grocery store is. There's like a dentist office. It just has a great vibe.
Yeah.
Like if I lived in that neighborhood, I would love having that there.
It's always packed. I have several friends that live over there and all of those places are packed. It's almost like we want to live in like little walkable neighborhoods with fun stuff to do.
But Harbortown's another example. It's a smaller, there's not a lot that down there business wise, but like to have these nice places, that interactivity with the neighborhood there, I think is a great thing. So shout out to Kinfolk opening River Terrace with their new menu and the other places that are been down there already going strong. We mentioned Kokoza, Miss Cordelia's and others. Another story we got new this week. I thought about you. I think you have some more familiarity with this than I do. Mary's BOTE.
Right. Mary's Boat.
Mary's Boat. Mm-hmm. Bar of Tropical Escapism.
Yes.
Or we're just calling it the boat. Getting on the boat. That opens in 2 weeks?
It opens in a couple of weeks.
So Kristen Yates, I think, wrote about that for us this week, but tell the listeners a little bit more about it.
She did. So Cameo Cocktail Bar that is in Midtown on Union at the bottom of the Citizen Building. It's next to the Union Avenue Kroger. Those folks opened that over a year ago. They're actually about to celebrate like their 1 year birthday this week. So happy birthday, Cameo. But they had always planned to open another bar, another location with something different. And they had been doing Tropical Tuesdays at Cameo for months where they would focus on like tropical style drinks. Some people call it tiki. They kind of distinguish tropical versus tiki. Tiki can be a little tricky if when you're talking about appropriation of cultures and stuff like that. Don't worry about any of that. Just know.
By your second or third drink, you won't be worried about any of that.
Just don't worry about that. It's like a tropical, it's exactly what you think. They also have kind of mixed in some, I think, easy drinking kind of beverages. They call boat drinks. It's boat drinks, beach drinks. I think we kind of know about that. And Kristen gets into that a little bit in the article, talking about that like Southern waterside drinking culture and everybody that goes to Orange Beach and 38 and all of that, you know what we're talking about. So Tropical Tuesday went so well at Cameo that they're opening a second location that's totally dedicated to that, and they've gone all out with their tropical decor and their bright colors.
This is on Cooper, near Cooper and Peabody, sort of in that area.
Right, and so it's actually kind of like where the former Midtown Muddy's was. It's across the street from that, near the Hattie B's that we were also just talking about.
Yep.
And it's a little tiny place. The storefront is, at least, so it might be hard to see, but yeah, that'll be opening up soon. Full disclosure, I'm pals with the owners. I know them. They're great folks. And I just appreciate that they're it's almost like an indie restaurant in the restaurant scene now in Memphis and everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's these big restaurant groups and they do a great job of having multiple locations. Andrew Michael here, I love those restaurants. This isn't saying anything against those. It's just saying it's nice to have something different where longtime bartenders and servers, people who have been working, behind the bar, bringing out buckets of ice for years, take everything that they've learned and turn it into, what I'm imagining is going to be a cool place. If it's like Cameo, it's going to be well done.
This sounds like exactly what would have been my spot in a different portion of my life.
Right.
But it could be your spot if you are in that portion of your life.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And maybe, in fact, this is not even an age thing. I may get back to that portion of my life as my kids age out, you know?
I think that, I can see that. I mean, okay, so also over there, let's just talk about it. There's like Bar Keo.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me back up. Let me, because there's another thing I want to bring out.
Yeah.
This will rhyme with where you're going. So Mary's Boat is a potential answer. When it opens in 2 weeks, will be a potential answer to a question I was asked last week by a Daily Memphian intern. And the question was, what's the dive bar in Memphis now? And my first thought was the Lamplighter Lounge on Madison.
Yes.
Another person at the table, their first thought was Alex's Tavern.
Yes.
I've since thought about it and come up with other ideas, but Bar Keo is not as there's different kinds of divey, right? Bar Keo is nice, but it still has that. It's a locally owned. It has a very particular vibe to it. Mm-hmm. Like it's either your kind of place or it's not. A lot of places are like that. Anyway, I'll throw the baton back to you because you're already running with it.
Bar Keo. I think it's more of a neighborhood bar, but I think it definitely could be a dive bar. I'm going to say for me, a dive bar not only has to have this certain vibe that you're describing, that you're touching on, but
there's no set definition of what dive bar means.
There isn't, but to me, I feel like a dive bar needs to be, their actual offerings need to be like pretty no frills, and the price reflects that.
Yeah.
And so I would not say that Cameo Mary's Boat fit that, because they're using, like, they're really into the mixology. They're doing a great job making really good cocktails that, you know, are not going to be your $4 whatever in soda, or your, you know, I don't know. Do we even have $4 drinks in Memphis anymore? We used to in the ancient times.
A cool bar can be a dive bar, and a dive bar can be a cool bar, but a dive bar and a cool bar can be two separate things.
Exactly.
Right. So where does the Cove fit in here?
Where does the Cove? Natalie asked the question I was going to ask. Where does the Cove? Is the Cove a dive bar or a cool bar?
Man, I think it can be both.
But their prices can be.
I know, and it's trickier. I think we might have to I might have to revisit my definition,
the Cove
because
on Broad Avenue near
nothing is cheap anymore.
Muddy's, where we were just talking about.
Yes, because nothing is actually, like, I don't know what the prices are at Zinni's and Alex's, and Lamplighter. I threw Zinni's in there. Those are the dive bars to me.
So my response was, once the Lamplighter's first thing that came to mind, was back when I was a dive bar person, back in the day before I had kids, and my wife and I were hanging out at bars a lot. Our places were the Lamplighter, the P&H on Madison, and then the High Tone on Poplar, which was sort of a music venue, so not as much of a bar. But like the P&H and the Lamplighter, those were where we went.
Pour one out for the P&H.
Yep.
That was definitely a good one. I think, it's kind of a bummer. Those are getting fewer and farther between.
Nobody was mixing drinks at the P&H.
Not unless they like had a little flask or something on the side. Right. Yeah. So I think I came up in that era when, there were places where you would go and you pay for a setup, right? And you have your flask, or you get a pitcher of beer, versus all the craft cocktails. So I make that distinction, but maybe we need to revisit it, because supply chain, shrinkflation, general apocalypse, I don't know, like, can you get cheap drinks anymore?
I feel like this question, whether it's on this podcast or in written form, is this is a phrase I borrowed from a writer I like, and I use it all the time. I even do capital letters, and they don't edit it out, even though it's not AP style, which I appreciate. This is a subject for further research.
Yes.
I think, I don't know whether it's a subject for further research for me, but maybe for you or for someone else. I think it's a good topic. What is the dive bar, cool bar scene in Memphis? What's the difference between these things? Where does one go if one really wants to be at a dive bar, you know?
Right.
We talked about Bill Street last week. George Paul's Last Call, that little bar nook behind, little sort of shoved in right behind Blue City Cafe. That's not really a dive bar, but that's definitely its own kind of bar vibe.
And I think when you're talking to people too, like, the intern that you were talking to, you might need to get more information from them about what they're asking for in a dive bar, because the Cove could certainly be exactly what they're looking for, or like Memphis Whistle, which I think feels a little divey because it's in an old house. Like, it's not formal at all. Like, you're going to be sitting in like on a couch. You're going to go up to the bar. That's another good one. But they also are
There's
into
also,
their
frankly,
cocktails.
the difference between like the kind of dive bars we're talking about.
Yes.
And like dive bars where like, you know, you might get into a bar fight and beat up, or, you know,
Yeah.
more Roadhouse type situations.
We're not talking
you know?
about any of those. We're gatekeeping that list.
That's right.
The bar fight bars.
Bar
yeah.
fight bars. You mentioned, before we get out of here, you mentioned, you know, restaurant groups, local restaurant groups. And one piece of news this week is that what was Penny's Nitty Gritty down across from FedEx Forum is now the Courtside Lounge. Penny's Nitty Gritty was owned by an outside of Memphis restaurant group, and now Courtside Lounge is going to be owned by a local restaurant group, but not with Penny Hardaway's name on it.
Right.
A lot of stuff going on there. I don't know. So
that is in the restaurant at the bottom of the Westin.
Yep.
It's been many, many things over the years. A million years ago, it was Soul. Sole.
I vaguely remember
Do you
that.
vaguely remember this? I vaguely remember it. But then it was Bleer with like BLEU for a long time. And there was like an era in there when it was really good. And we went there for lunch all the time when I was working at the Commercial Appeal.
That was during the Chris Wallace era of Memphis Grizzlies management.
Mm-hmm.
That was the hangout spot for Grizzlies executives.
Yeah.
And so like I conducted a hour-long interview with Chris Wallace and John Hollinger there once. My most memorable experience there was the day that Robert Pera took ownership from Michael Heisley of the Grizzlies. We walked over, Chris Vernon and I and someone else, we walked over across from the arena to I think it was Blue at the time. And to the right of us, Michael Heisley was sitting, having his last supper, basically as Grizzlies owner.
Oh, wow.
And to the left of us, Robert Pera was walking out.
Ooh.
And they didn't even see each other, but we were standing right there. That's a sort of a fly on the wall thing I'll always remember.
You were caught in between two moments in time.
In
betwixt.
Yes.
Very dramatic. I think I interviewed some Grizzlies there too, like a long time ago.
I don't get the sense that that's like the Grizzlies hangout anymore.
I don't think so. I don't know where it is, but who knows? Maybe it will be again as the courtside.
We would have to do some
grill.
research, but I think that Cal's Championship Steakhouse had a longer run than Penny's Nitty Gritty.
I think you're right. So that was the restaurant in the Doubletree on Sanderland. That's now Erling Jensen Small Bites.
Yes, it was when John Calipari was head coach of the University of Memphis Tigers. It was Cal's Championship Steakhouse, which some cynics might have dubbed Cal's NIT Championship Steakhouse.
Ooh. Well, I never went there, but I saw the sign many, many times. So good luck to everybody's namesake restaurants that are still around.
BB King's really a triumph of that whole situation. Like a lot of those don't work out, and BB King's totally worked out.
They did it. Good for them. And I don't know. I guess we'll go check out Courtside Grill and see how it compares to the other litany of concepts that have been in there. Hotel restaurants are hard, though. They change frequently. So, this is some perspective to keep.
Yep. So a lot of stuff going on this week. We sort of bounced around. We got to get out of here because we got to finish these pastries from Lucy J's that are sitting in front of us. And so we're going to eat, and then we're going to talk to you next week.